measurement. So what happens when you start measuring things on the most traditional methods? So it's the last view, it's the last click. I gave an example of one that probably isn't a good idea to use. But what happens when you do that versus actually measuring how many credit card signups or cars you've sold? What happens? Anyone?
I think it depends on the KPI of the campaign. I mean, we would certainly love to define, and that's why we have our agencies who identify strategy. You know, it's sitting with the client, understanding what their objectives are, and then they outline them to us. You know, I don't think measuring to one KPI is a dangerous sum. You know, we've seen that with just measuring through click-through rate. You know, and we run, again, it goes back to the people. We have, 60 plus people who are looking and analyzing, who have PhDs, who look at this each and every day. So I think it takes that human capital to be able to understand what the objective is. If used appropriately, it's the most powerful thing, and it's why you see programmatic ROI increasing at 76% a year, because it does drive credit card sales. It does drive action, but it has to be done properly.
I think that, to me, I agree. Attribution's a tough problem to solve. In fact, I think, 2011 was viewability, 2012 is viewability, 2013 is fraud, 2014, and my guess is going to be attribution because everybody's talking about it lately. I think for us, and I spend a lot of time talking to brand managers at advertisers that you all represent as sort of, ambassadors. To me, the brand manager cares about one KPI. If I spend $100 million, how many razor blades or how many credit cards or how many XYZs am I going to sell? And whether that's clicks, view-throughs, some sophisticated attribution model, I think that is the primary underlying challenge that we all have to answer in this ecosystem is if I invest X, what is my return and how do I justify investing more? There's nobody in this room who doesn't want to see more money flow into digital. And I think that if we can crack the nut on how we actually quantify the value of your advertising in a true ROI mechanism, that it eliminates fraud and eliminates all the suspicious stuff like viewability and things like that, then I think as an industry, we will become, to what John Mattel was saying, the most measurable and the most sophisticated. There are billions and billions of impressions and hundreds of millions of users, more than television, more than print, more than radio, and we can measure it all.
So Jamie just told me we have 10 minutes left. Though actually the bar will stay open until the last man drops, so we're all good.
No peeing in the corner, please.
So I've got two more questions, but I would still encourage you all to ask questions now. And in fact, I'll go. Does anyone have any other questions before I go to my last two, which are to let you know best practices for DSP and how should everyone stay up to date? So that's going to be my last two questions. Got any other questions before I go to those two? All right, and we will obviously be around afterwards. So, best practices, DSPs. What should you do? So you're there. You've decided. You're embracing programmatic. You're embracing viewability. You're embracing attribution. You're trying to be the best you can be.
Just because you have access to DSP doesn't make you a RTB expert. I think understanding the ecosystem, understanding what you're trading with, what's the currency, what's the value of the data, understanding how that data, what the outcomes are telling you, what the signals in the marketplace are. From display, you mentioned radio and mobile, well, we can measure those things, right? And TV as well. Looking at that and understanding what the customer experience or journey is, and looking at how the tools that we have available tell the story back to this, and then take action in real time against that. That's the beauty of what we're trying to do. Partnering with the best of breed companies. I think finding partners who represent what they really do and don't try to do too much, but tell you what they're good at, and can really partner with you and understand what your objectives are is value. And I think going back to what we all talked about before, partnering together, if we all agree, which I think we do, that we can eliminate the fraudulent behavior and we can, not reward the fraudulent behavior and the traffic. That's it. But it takes the fortitude and the ability not to cave to a certain deadline or objective to push back on that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Maybe. Do you guys separate, or do you, maybe in your intent of your question, separate DSP from your data management? tool or platform? Are they
We're
separate?
one and the same. The Xaxis has a DMP that sits it's the heartbeat of what we do, and that's what makes us unique. We have the DMP, and we trade based off of that data.
So it doesn't, the actual demand side platform, the purpose is affecting the buy is less important to you. Is that right? It's more the data?
The data is the maximum value. That's what we cherish. And we'll use multiple DSPs for a variety of reasons. But
geography, media type.
Absolutely, and it's also to keep yourself true, to make sure that you have different purposes or different things that you're trying to act on. It's also to keep the market true.
So in other words, even if you've got an automotive company that's trying to maximize things in certain DMAs in the United States, you'll still use multiple DSPs for that?
We will, and the reason we'll do that is because there's intricacies within the DSP that get down to providing value in terms of how you bid, how those bids are answered, how they're placed, and it is a science. That's why we have data scientists, working on that every day. But we have to, again, it's not that we're just going out willy-nilly with everybody. We have valued partners that we deal with, but we certainly test across multiple. Of which you're one of them. Little shout out.
Thank you. Look at that. We love Xaxis too.
So I think
that'll
what
cost
we're
you a couple
also
points in
saying
rating.
is really relevant, right, which is the value in the decision making or the value in the intelligence. And correct me if I'm misstating what you're saying, but the value in what you're buying and the value in how you determine what to buy, whether that be in a planning stage or even in an execution phase, is really in the intelligence of your data and the ability for that data to answer questions that you need answered. Once you actually have made those decisions, the execution of that buy becomes a much more tactical approach. And there are certain DSPs who have data and the ability to execute on media buys. And those, I think, are the ones that are going to bubble up to the ones that, for lack of a better word, are just glorified ad networks.
Yeah, getting those KPIs right too is important. As you said earlier, the system automates and optimizes, and we still see buys where the click rate is that measure of success, and 85% of all clicks are generated by 8% of people, and those are not the kind of people that you want to be driving business, and yet the systems are still optimizing that way. So getting that metric right can be really impactful. When we think about a client that we have, which is Kellogg's. And we've been working with Kellogg's over the past few years, and they've been using our tools, and they've been doing a lot of programmatic. And what they found is when they are doing things right, going and looking at the right KPIs, they can actually use those traditional metrics that you mentioned. And in this case, it's actually sales. They put it into market mix models and can look at sales lift, and what they're finding is they can get 5 to 6 times return by using programmatic. But if they're doing it understanding that the end objective is actually sales and not click rates, and using the right tools to manage the process, has been incredibly successful for them.
And using data that they know is true.
Yes, absolutely.
So last question. So it's complicated, right? So we established early on, you did a test 12 months ago, the market's moved dramatically in the last 12 months. How on earth does anyone stay up to date with this stuff? I mean, it's moving so quickly. What should, buyers think about and do to try to stay on top and make sure that they are, at the bleeding edge of this stuff, to make sure that everything they are buying is really being shown to a real person and it's the right person? What should they do?
I would say know that you can't do it all. There's the best thing about our business is there's centers of gravity or excellence that we all have, whether it be within the agency, within publishers, whether vertical publishers. And I think it's important to know what you do well, and it goes back to that, and articulate that message. So often, and even within our organization, we have distinct groups who focus on a very laser-like focused task, whether it be technology, whether it be actually the planning, whether that be the inventory acquisition, but know that you can't do all of those things. But at the same time, understand that as an organization, you have to communicate the values of each one of them, because holistically, if we will relate back to that strategy, it all has to work in tandem. So I think centers of focus that you have, but an overall view or strategy for the organization that everybody is clear on, working from the top down.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I think obviously there's a lot of work going on with the various industry bodies, the IAB, the MRC, the 4As, around development of standards. I think standards are incredibly important, and I think they're necessary, and I think as the industry continues to evolve and mature, those standards will get better and better and represent the industry as a whole. So I think that's a way to know what's going on and know what's topical because they typically build standards around topical things. I think the other thing is that 30, 40 years ago, marketing was kind of like an episode of Mad Men, right? Everything was done over lunch with martinis and handshake deals.
I miss those days.
Yeah. Well,
I do too.
so I'm always up for martini lunches and handshake deals. But the point is that marketing has become technology driven, right? And there was a statistic that was published a few months ago that I read that marketing organizations are actually going to outspend IT organizations in the next 5 years. In order to make decisions, in order to keep abreast of what's going on and how things are working, you need to basically have technology experts in your organization. Right. So, Brian talked about the PhDs, and, Federated have got tons of people who are highly, highly technical. Marketing organizations and agencies and people who represent advertisers are evolving into technology companies. If you look at Google, if you look at Facebook, those are the guys that are, for by and large, making huge progress because of their knowledge of technology and their ability to leverage that technology to get results.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up. We are all available to take your questions at the bar.
At the bar.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.